You're listening to Hoedown History, where we explore the history and legends of America's old-time and bluegrass music. It's a tune found under several different names. Over the years, it has turned up not just in old-time and bluegrass repertoires, but also cowboy and western, country, and especially the folk scene. It's been performed and recorded by some big names over the years, from Doc Watson, Peter Rowan, and the Stanley Brothers to Joan Baez, and even Bob Dylan. Though the lyrics do vary from version to version, the basic story of the song remains much the same. A traveling gambler falls in love and promises to settle down and give up his untempered lifestyle after just one more last deal, only to wind up behind bars when a card game goes awry. Like many old-time and bluegrass songs, a big part of its appeal is that contrast between the song's lively melody and that darker narrative. So stick around, because we're going to explore the history of this song. We'll listen to some of the earliest recordings, and finally we'll track down where this tune originally came from. And it's a journey we'll have to make overseas. Oh, and I'll even discuss what I found a bit surprising in researching this tune, namely where this whole gambling theme even came from, because this appears to be one of those cases of a word that was lost in translation.
I'm a roving gambler. I gamble down in town. Wherever I meet with a deck of cards, I'll lie my money down.
You're listening to the earliest commercial recording of this tune with vocals by the Virginia-born singer Kelly Harrell, who recorded it way back in 1925. Harrell was a popular singer during the 1920s and cut more than a dozen songs for the Victor and OK labels. Harrell was born in 1889 in Drapers Valley, Wythe County, and from his early teen years worked in various textile mills. While he was a talented singer, he didn't actually play any instrument. When he met the popular singer Henry Witter, who was also from the local area, he realized that he was at least as good a singer as he, and was inspired enough to try his hand in making some records as well. Remember, this was at a time when all the record labels of the day were actively recruiting talent for the newfound hillbilly record market. So in early 1925, when Harrell was 35 years old, he went to New York City and recorded 4 tracks for Victor Records. Among them, our first vocal recording of the Roving Gambler. While Harrell went on to make more records for Victor from 1925 to 29, starting in 1930, his recording career came to a halt. Because he was only a vocalist, Harrell always required backing by other musicians, and by the 1930s, the Great Depression had so damaged the recording business by this time that Victor was unwilling to pay the cost of hiring those backup musicians, which he needed. The historian Tony Russell described Harrell's singing as having that, quote, wind-dried voice of an Appalachian man, only 2 or 3 generations on from Scots or Irish immigration. There was nothing sweet or smooth about Harrell. He had none of the polish of Riley Puckett or the warm humor of Jimmie Rodgers. Yet there was a rugged, gloomy grace to his singing.
Coming around the curve, a whistling and a blowing and straining every nerve.
I mentioned that Harrell's recording is our first vocal version of Roving Gambler, but there is an older instrumental recording. It was made in 1924 by Samantha Bumgarner. She actually recorded the tune as The Gamblin' Man, along with Eva Davis. I do have to admit that while many historians consider this our first commercial recording of the Roving Gambler, I have a hard time making out the full melody compared to our later vocal versions.
If I was a roving man, I'd move from town to town, meet up with a deck of cards, away I'd down.
Also in 1925, the same year that Harrell recorded the tune, we find another legendary recording by the Georgia-born Land Norris, who recorded the tune in April of that same year. Land Norris was not only just a popular banjo and fiddle player, but he was also a fur trader. He was known to carry his furs of mink, coon, possum, skunk, muskrat, deer, and even bear from the Great Smoky Mountains to the fashionistas of New York and Boston. According to Norris himself, he would bring along his fiddle and banjo on these fur trading trips in order to play some music at various stops along the way. He would trade his performances in exchange for food and lodging. And as he put it, quote, "You can mix music and business."
I am a roving gambler, I gamble down in town. Wherever I meet with a deck of cards, I lie my money down.
Just 2 months after Norris's recording in June of 1925, the tune was also recorded by one Al Carver. If that name doesn't sound familiar to you, it may be because Carver was actually a fictitious name for Vernon Dalhart, that legendary pioneer of early country and hillbilly music. But Vernon Dalhart wasn't his real name either. He was actually born Marion Try Slaughter in Jefferson, Texas in 1883. He took up his more well-known stage name from 2 towns in Texas named Vernon and Dalhart, while he was punching cattle as a teenager during the 1890s. He moved to New York City in 1910 in hopes of becoming a professional opera singer and studied classical music for a time. In 1916, he saw a notice in a newspaper that the Edison Company was auditioning for some new recording artists. By this time, he had tried for 7 years to get a chance to record with Edison, but to no avail. But finally, in 1916, after beating out a host of other singers during the first round of auditions, he was given a chance to sing for the man himself, Thomas A. Edison. By this time, Edison was basically half deaf, so he commanded Vernon to sing directly into his ear trumpet. Edison loved his clear tenor voice and was satisfied that he could easily understand every word he sang. He was given the thumbs up and went on to record literally thousands of discs that sold in the millions of copies during the 1920s and 30s. Like Roving Gambler, many of these numbers were released under many different pseudonyms, and Dalhart had over 100 of these fictitious names. One of the main reasons being, with all these recordings by one man, the record company didn't want the buying public to get sick of Dalhart's name everywhere. While extremely popular during his day, Dalhart didn't really survive the test of time over the following decades. His voice can be a bit jarring for some listeners, and many today don't even consider him an authentic hillbilly musician. As Ralph Peer, the legendary music producer, wrote in 1955, quote, "Vernon Dalhart was never a hillbilly and never a hillbilly artist. He had the peculiar ability to adapt hillbilly music to suit the taste of a non-hillbilly population." Regardless of Vernon's singing style, he did play a fine harmonica, and also the Jaws harp. His recording of Roving Gambler even includes a Jaws harp solo, which I think is a first for this channel. What's also interesting about this recording, and we don't know for sure, but historians believe that the guitar player on this track may well be Carson Robison. Robison worked closely with Dalhart during this time, but would eventually go on to make some records on his own, including a popular version of Roving Gambler which he recorded in the 1930s. That further popularized the tune in the years to follow. Robison's recording is more in that cowboy and western style, which kind of bridged the gap of the tune from predominantly an old-time string band number in the 1920s to its emergence as a folk number in the 1940s. It would be in 1944 when Woody Guthrie adapted the song a bit and made a recording of the tune under the title Gambling Man, which he recorded for Moses Ash. From there on, Roving Gambler would be picked up by many folk musicians during the 1950s and 60s, where it became an even more popular number. Folk musician Terry Gilkyson recorded it in 1950, Burl Ives in 1955, which brings us to our first bluegrass recordings of the number. The Stanley Brothers appear to be the first major bluegrass band to record Roving Gambler back in 1956. And that pretty much set the stage for the song to become a standard in this genre throughout the following decades. In 1960, it was the first track in the Country Gentleman's debut studio recorded album, entitled Country Songs Old and New. But probably my favorite bluegrass version is the one recorded by Larry Sparks, off that classic 1975 album, Classic Bluegrass. I should also mention that it was also eventually performed by many prominent artists, including Bob Dylan and even Simon and Garfunkel, who recorded it on their Sounds of Silence album. And there are many, many other recordings of this tune, too many to count. But before we get to the source of our tune, I should also mention some other important versions of the melody which can be found under different titles and with different lyrics. Some of these related tunes include The Little Black Train, which the Carter family recorded in 1935. Also, The Gambler's Dying Words, which Hark Reader Moore recorded in 1927. And also The Roving Moonshiner, which Asa Martin recorded in 1931. Okay, so where did this song actually come from? While we know it was a popular number with commercial country artists in the 1920s, it must have been floating around for some time before that. As early as 1917, the folk historian Cecil Sharp listened to a version of Roving Gambler being performed by one Mrs. Townsley and Mrs. Wilson from Pineville, Kentucky. He jotted down these now familiar lyrics in his now famous collection of folk tunes. But the tune even pops up about a generation before this publication under the title The Gambling Man, which can be found in Delaney's Songbook, number 23 from around 1900. This publication sheds some light on the tune's history before the advent of commercial country recordings, and it explains at least one reason why it was so widely disseminated up to that time. The Delaney Songster was a popular 19th and early 20th century booklet containing the lyrics to many vaudeville, minstrel, pop, and sentimental stage songs which were popular at the time. So, like many of the tunes I cover on this channel, Roving Gambler, or at least early versions of it, appear to be one of those numbers that were spread throughout the country from vaudeville and minstrel stages around the turn of the century. But here's where things get fascinating. These lyrics were later republished in 1927 by Carl Sandburg in his American Song Bag. Sandburg includes two versions of the tune, one entitled Roving Gambler and the other The Gambling Man, which he got from Delaney's Songbook. It's easy to miss the distinction, but notice the spelling of gambling in the second title. This isn't just an off way of spelling the word gamble, or playing cards. While the two gambles are pronounced in the same way, the gamble with an O is quite different in meaning. Gamble with an O is a word we don't use much in modern English anymore. But if you read a lot of Victorian poetry, you may be familiar with its use to describe an animal, like a deer or horse, gambling about. And essentially it means to frolic or run about. And this is what Sandberg has to say about the two tunes. Quote, "This, the Gambling with an O Man song, is evidently the popular song of English origin, from which the minstrel troops made their verses. We may note in passing that while gamblers may gamble and gamblers may gamble, the English version carries no deck of cards." So, if Sandberg is correct in saying that Our Roving Gambler came from the popular English song The Gambling Man, perhaps the theme of the song and the spelling were changed to suit the different meaning of the word gamble. Obviously, the two words would have sounded the same when sung, so it's not that hard to imagine the minstrel performers eventually changing the meaning of the entire song to suit the card gambling motif. So according to Sandberg, the song does have its source in the earlier English version, The Gambling Man, and this tune does appear to have been pretty well documented. Now, this is where things get a bit hairy, because in searching for the origins of Gambling Man, we come across many different versions of this tune from the British Isles and Ireland. The tune goes by a bunch of different names, including the Roving Journeyman, the Journeyman, Roving Jack, the Rambling Irishman, and the Roving Irishman. Our earliest documented source of this tune dates to between 1818 and 1838 in an Old English Broadsides collection. It's interesting to compare the lyrics of our more recent American Roving Gambler with this older English version. While the lyrics have been changed to fit the gambling theme, both still deal with a journeying or roving man who charms a local woman. While one verse of the American song goes, quote, "I had not been in Frisco many more weeks than 3. I met up with a pretty little gal. She fell in love with me." The older overseas version goes, "I had not been in Carlo the days but only 3, when a Skinner's lovely daughter, she fell in love with me." And even more striking is the similarity between these lines. The American version goes, "She took me in her parlor, cooled me with her fan, whispered low in her mother's ear, I love this gambling man." The older overseas version goes, "She wanted me to live with her and took me by the hand, and she slyly told her mama she loved a journeyman." There are other similarities as well, and I don't know about you folks, but I find these changes in the lyrics completely fascinating. Unfortunately, I couldn't find an actual recording of this 19th century English version online anywhere. But thankfully, this song has also been a mainstay in the Irish and Scottish music tradition as well. Here's one recording in the Irish tradition by Delia Murphy. Give it a listen.
I am a roving journeyman, I go from town to town, and wherever I get a job of work I'm willing to set down. Me bundle on me shoulder and me stick within me hand, it's down the country I will go, a roving journeyman. And when I come to Carlow, the girls all jump for joy, there's one and two the other, here comes a roving boy. One treats me to a bottle and another to a dram, a toast goes round the table, here's to the journeyman.
I know what you're thinking. The melody sounds familiar, right? Delia Murphy sings this song to the melody of another popular old-time and bluegrass tune, that is Red-Haired Boy, or The Little Beggarman for my overseas listeners. But before you go on thinking that our Roving Gambler tune comes from Red-Haired Boy, you need to listen to the other melody, because it was quite common for these verses to hop from one melody to another. Both melodies were both commonly performed in Ireland, and there are many different lyrical versions as well. It's also interesting to note how all these versions have changed the place names to suit the local population. I've seen lyrics mention London, Exeter, Brighton Town, County Carlow, Castle Comerall, and even Philadelphia, which was a common entry point for many Irish immigrants in the past. So now I'll play a version of the Roving Irishman with that other melody. See if you can make out any similarity between this song and the American Roving Gambler.
I am a roving Irishman, you need not know my name. I've traveled all around the world, but no home can I claim. Of all the places I have been, there's none I would compare with the beautiful Blackwater side and my friends and loved ones there.
It's a beautiful tune, and no wonder it's been performed and recorded by a countless number of Celtic musicians over the years. What I find so interesting is picking up on those differences in the melody and phrasing between the Celtic and the American version, because those differences help give you a better understanding of what it is exactly that makes our American folk music so unique. So there you have it, folks. A song that started in some form or other as an Old English folk ballad that was brought over to the US and turned into a minstrel song that was later played as an old-time tune that became a bluegrass standard, and ironically even eventually found its way back into a folk tune. Well, folks, that's all I got on Roving Gambler. Hope you enjoyed this one, and thanks for listening.